The human race has nearly been wiped out, and it's up to a young pilot and his upgraded spaceship to stop intergalactic terrorists and save the Earth from total destruction. This is Gaiares! Gaiares is one of 12 games included in Evercade cartridge 23, Renovation Collection 1. The game was developed by Nippon Telenet and released in Japan near the end of 1990. In early 1991, it was published in North America by Renovation. This game is exclusive to the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive. In the year 3008, the Earth is pretty much devoid of all life due to environmental destruction, radioactivity, and pollution. The human race has been forced to live off-planet in space colonies and is facing extinction. An intergalactic terrorist group is currently planning to invade Earth and use all of the polluted waste to build weapons of mass destruction. Oh, and the leader of this group has got to have one of the greatest names for an antagonist ever conceived. Her name is ZZ Bad Nasty. However, the game manual says her name is ZZ Bad Nasty, which is what I think it was supposed to be, but in the game she's referred to every time as ZZ Bad Nasty. So that's gonna be her name. To quickly sum up the rest of the story, to prevent Bad Nasty from succeeding, the United Star Cluster of Lizaluth is willing to supernova Earth's sun and destroy the Earth if the remaining humans can't stop her. Alexis from Lizaluth wants to help return the Earth to its former beauty, so she delivers the TOZ System to Dan Dare, Earth's last hope at countering the terrorist organization. So having described the story, I can explain why the game is called Gaiares. Gaiares is actually two words combined. The first is Gaia, a word that represents the personification of the Earth. The second is res, which doesn't seem like a word until you realize that there's no L sound in Japanese, and English words with L sounds are often spoken like R's in Japanese. So, replace the R with an L and you get less. Well, you gotta add an extra S in there, I suppose, but in the end, you get Gaia-less. Or in other words, Earthless, which is what the human race is in the game story. The game is a horizontally scrolling shoot-'em-up with a unique power-up system. As you maneuver your ship, a device called the TOZ, it's T-O-Z, I could never figure out what that actually stood for. Well, anyway, it hovers nearby, offering additional firepower. However, the TOZ can be sent out and attached to enemy ships, and after a few moments of being attached, it will return, giving you the weapons of the enemy ship. Different enemies will provide different weapons, so to switch weapons, you'll have to attach the TOZ to another ship equipped with a different weapon. You can also retrieve the same weapon multiple times to power it up. However, there are some ships you cannot steal weapons from, and that includes the level's bosses. You can also use the TOZ to retrieve defensive items floating around in space as well, such as a shield or a device that instantly clears the screen of enemies. The thing to be aware of though is that if you send the TOZ ahead, you cannot fire again until it returns. You're also in control of the ship's movement speed, as there's a button to cycle through 3 speed settings, and that'll be needed in some areas of the game, as you might want to slow down to navigate tight corridors or speed up to avoid some of the faster attacks. Your ship can take multiple hits before being destroyed, and if you run out of lives, you're given a limited amount of continues before being forced to start from the beginning. This was a game that I was always aware of, but I never played it in the past. I'll never forget those Gaiares ads that would always appear in video game magazines I used to read. So the game actually seemed pretty hyped up back then, especially being one of the first 8 megabit Genesis game cartridges. And after playing it, I thought the game itself was a pretty fun shoot-'em-up, although it could be difficult in some parts. But it's helped that your ship can actually take a few hits before it's destroyed. The game's graphics, audio, and visual effects are pretty nice as well, but I really like the large creative bosses in this game, which are all giant mechanized versions of things like mermaids and dragons, and even a female warrior with a shield and sword. And so as I've said, the game can be difficult, but it's also a blast to play. The game was also rated pretty highly when it was released, and I think I've got to agree with that consensus. So here we are with our ranking list of all the games in the Renovation Collection, and I've got no choice really but to put Gaiares all the way up, not in triple S, but double S. I mean, the game is pretty difficult, but it is really fun. So I think double S is a good spot for it here. And here we are with our all Evercade game ranking list. so we gotta take Gaiares, head on up to the double S level, and figure out where we want to put this. I think right here is good, right over Sensible Soccer, but right under Splatterhouse Part 3. Now I've got a couple of interesting tricks and codes here for Gaiares. You may not know this, but there's a super powerful weapon hidden in the game. To access it, you've got to fire your toes out 6 times, but not have it attached to anything, which is easier said than done. The next time your toes attaches to an enemy, you'll automatically gain access to the T-Braster, a super powerful homing weapon. However, you'll lose it when you move on to the next level. The remaining codes require controller button inputs, and since the Evercade controls can be remapped, I'll be referring to the buttons as if we were using the original Sega Genesis controllers. First, during gameplay, if you pause the game and then hold down left, A, and C, and then press start to unpause the game, you'll be invincible. However, the effect will only last until the end of the level, and you'll have to enter that code once for every level if you want invincibility the whole game. Now for the following codes to work, you'll have to apply this next code, which is simply to hold down A, B, and C on the title screen and press start. Instead of the game starting, you'll be taken to a hidden option menu that contains a difficulty option, music and sound test, and the option to change the text to Japanese. That's pretty cool, but we're just getting started here. Next, set the BGM test option to 18, and then press and hold A on controller 2 while exiting the options menu. You'll then be taken back to the title screen. When you press start, instead of the game starting, you'll be taken to a level select. After you start the game from whatever level you want, you'll have access to the next 2 codes. If you pause the game and hold up and press A and then unpause, you'll automatically have another weapon. You can keep doing this to cycle through the weapons and choose the one you want. The only drawback is that the screen doesn't display the correct weapon unless you detach and retrieve the toes. I have one last code here, and it's very similar to the last one, and it's basically you pause the game and then hold up and press C. When you unpause, you'll find that your weapon is now upgraded, but again, it won't show on the screen the correct power level unless you detach and retrieve the toes. Now to be honest, I've seen these codes in multiple places on the internet, and some of the codes were listed incorrectly. I only discovered the correct buttons through experimentation. So with the last code, I'm not exactly sure if you have to press the C button once or twice. So if one way doesn't work, it'll probably work the other way. And that'll wrap it up for Gaiares. Next time, I'll be looking at Granada from the same cartridge, Renovation Collection 1.